Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate everyone joining for this part one of a two-part series from AMA DocSIG here. We decided to host this on Zoom to allow those who want to join to not have to register for AMA's conference. And so I think that that's going to reach a really wide audience. We had a lot of turnout here. We're expecting somewhere in the range between 70 and 80 participants. So I think that this is going to be a really good turnout. We received a lot of interest from students. We had originally started this conversation around having kind of a 1-2 punch before AMA, where the part one is all about your CV and crafting that in small sessions, and then working into actually navigating the interview process right before AMA, so then you feel pumped and ready to go in the AMA session. And so obviously doing this virtual, we've had to kind of navigate that. So I want to thank all of the panelists for taking the time out of their day to do this. All the communication, the bombardment of emails, the navigating all of this and organizing this has been a big undertaking. So I appreciate all of your precious time. I think I speak on behalf of Divya and DocSIG too to say that we want to thank everyone who decided to join today, as well as to thank Dr. Voorhees for kind of coordinating with us and offering his advice on what we should do and how to craft this session as well as possible. So I know that our marketing team worked really hard to coordinate all of this, as well as our special projects team. So on behalf of everyone at DocSIG, we want to welcome you all, and we invite you all to part two, which will be at the same time on August 3rd. So I'm trying to space these out just a week apart, so you don't forget anything from this session, carry on to the next. So the PDF document is in the chat here, as well as this recording will be available for all of those who decided to attend. And if you have any questions, I encourage everyone to put those in the chat. I will be moderating those and collecting those. And then when we move to Q&A, we'll have a backlog of questions to answer. And so we're going to go down the panel list. Normally in person, it's easier to kind of look at each other to see who's going to interject. So we thought that it'd be easier to just go down a predetermined list here of who's going to introduce themselves and everything. So I'm going to pass it over to the panel to have them have the most time as possible, and just start off with a really brief introduction, as well as what a good CV has looked like. And when we talk about good, of course, it's subjective, but in your experience, what's made you look twice at someone's CV that kind of caught your attention to begin with, and then we can work up from there. So without further ado, I will pass it over. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Should I go first, since I'm on the first on the list? Is that what you're thinking, Louis?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
I don't need much of an invitation. I'll try to keep this very brief because I know that we have many panelists and I want to, of course, hear what they have to say. I have three quick things. The first thing on my list that I've written in bold letters is pep talk. So let me just give you a brief, those of you on the job market, brief pep talk. I know it may be hard right now and it might be a little stressful, but you are so lucky to sort of have this opportunity to shop your work around. This may be one of the largest audiences in terms of meeting everyone on the job market that you see for some time. Certainly probably one of the most diverse audiences that you see in terms of different schools. So don't be stressed. It's actually a great opportunity. And the people that you meet now, you'll be seeing here and there. No matter where you land a job. So keep going, you're doing great. That's my pep talk. The turning to CVs, the way I prepared my thinking is just about, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Sorry, Louis. I'm Ashley Humphreys. I'm at Northwestern University. I split my time between the Kellogg School of Management and Medill School of Journalism. So in terms of thinking about CVs, honestly, most of them look the same. And so for me, the most important thing you can do for your CV is what's behind the CV, is the actual work. That may go without saying, but I think it's important just to have some meat there, have some solid things, pick projects that you're working on that are clearly far along. And so when I look at them, I think the most you can do is really have those solid abstracts that reflect a lot of solid thinking and work. Frankly, a lot of the other stuff looks like a formula. I'm curious to hear what the other panelists think, but I think the meat of it, you really want to hone those abstracts and be sure that you get to the point and contribution of your research very quickly. Then the other very quick thing I have that you may not think of right off the bat, but when I was looking at some CVs that the organizers asked me to look at, it occurred to me that you really want to think about the order of things that you put on your CV. So like if you have 3 working papers, put the highest status one first, right? The one that you're submitting to the Journal of Marketing or Journal of Marketing Research or JCR, something like that. Put the one, think carefully about the order, because of course what a CV does is send signals, and you probably want to send signals that you're sending your research to the kind of highest quality venues. And order really matters, as we all know, in terms of how we process information. There are primacy and recency effects. So think carefully about your lists and kind of how you signal prestige in those lists. That's my quick 2 cents. Next up, you guys might have the list. I don't know who's next.
I think next is me. So, again, nice to be here. Thank you, Divya and DocSIG, for organizing. I'm Alok Sabu at Georgia State University. Just picking up on the Pec Talk thing, I think it's a lot better this year than what it was last year. So again, it's amazing. It's a relatively better time to go on the market. There are enough postings already. So in terms of the CV, just keep the objective in mind. The objective is just to get an AMA. Okay, so there are a lot of things a CV can accomplish to do, but for the purposes of this discussion, it's only securing an AMA. And in some sense, it's actually good that there is a set order for the CV, because whoever is looking at the CV can easily compare, okay, do you have these sections or not? There are a few things that I want to emphasize. It is one of the most important documents that you send in a CV, in your application packet, because the other documents are important, but only after you've met the initial criteria, and that is set by your CV. So help the committee, help the people who are looking at the CV. So please include your substantive and methodological interest. I've seen that not being present a few times, and then you leave it to their interpretation as to, do you classify as CV, quant, strategy, where do you want to? So help them in some sense, provide that information. Please include your chair's information and your committee members and the status of your dissertation. Okay, if your proposal is defended or whatnot, those basic details, again, it's a signal, as Ashley mentioned, and how do you make that signal more credible? So you have to give information which will make it credible. So providing status, okay, the proposal was defended, so which tells the committee that yes, you are on your way to finish your dissertation, and most likely you will finish your dissertation, by the time you are ready to graduate. So include that information. On the abstract, it's a little more than what you would send in a paper. It has to have a little more than what a regular paper abstract would look like. It's by design an extent abstract. So include some evidence of the results. If there are methodological contributions, please include some again, credible details about what you could include there. Your working papers, again, are important. Highlight them, and again, in the order of prestige. For the other things, use reverse chronological, and at least in some of the CVs that I've seen, they are not ordered, so they're ordered in the opposite direction. So in general, it's a good idea to follow, if it's published already, in terms of your education, in terms of your academic appointments, if you already are out there, using a reverse chronological. If you have certifications from Coursera beyond your formal coursework and whatnot, it cannot hurt to include all of those. And just as in addition to the CV, if you have a website to complement, right, things that you cannot include on your CV, right, something about your personality, your hobbies, what you do in your free time, it's very nice to have a complimentary website if you do have one, and then include a link on your CV. Right. Again, in closing quickly on the CV, it is as important, but I also want to make it clear it's okay if you make some mistakes here and there. Most people on the other side realize there's a lot of stress, there are things happening. And in the end, committee members will probably look at an Excel sheet. So they'll filter that information out in a sheet, but you don't want to give them any reason to have a negative mark against your name, right? With that, I'm going to pass it on to the next member, which would be
Dr. Sridhar.
Buddy, I'm Hari at Texas A&M. All the best to all of you, and thank you for the opportunity for us to share our thoughts. I'm obviously going to echo a lot of what Ashley and Alok said. First thing about being positive. I'm sure a lot of you are framing it today as there are 200 opportunities. There's, we're coming out of COVID, and where am I going to go? Is it going to be the best place, the best weather? Frame it differently. Everybody on this panel, I happened to meet for the first time during my job market days. So it turns out I made like 500 friendships. I got one job, but I made 500 friendships. So think about it that way, and then suddenly you feel better. These are people you're going to actually live with and for the rest of your lives. As far as the CV is concerned, I have 3 points. One point where I may slightly disagree with Alok, which is that copy edit the CV. No, it's like, a referee at a baseball game. Nobody cares if the referee does a great job. But if the referee screws up once, that's all the whole game is about. So, copy edit the CV and give it to a professional copy editor. Give it to your colleagues in the university. Now, why? Because many a time people, think that the quality of your paper could be bad if you make all kinds of typos in your CV. So get it copy edited. Right? I know it's a small thing, but it's a very important. Second thing is, how do you even write the CV? Let's be practical. In the next 2 weeks, you're not going to have 50 more papers. So your CV is your CV. Whatever you've done over the last 5 years, it's your CV. So what I would write is a one-pager, which is very hard to write, about why somebody should give you a job. So can you write down today, in the evening, why should somebody give me a job? Write that, rewrite that, and then go look at your CV. Does your CV actually tell somebody why they should give you a job? Is it synchronized with that one page? If it's not, try to work through your CV so it's aligned with that one page. And when you work through your CV, you may see that that one pager will change. So go through this process of 3 days of writing the one page about why somebody should give you a job, and that make sure that your CV reflects that. And the last thing is, guess what? There are lots of people who have gone through this process before at you in your department, your colleagues in other universities. Just send your CV to them. It's not some classified FBI document. You can literally share it with 50 people, and everybody will spot some dimension there that can improve. Unilaterally listen to each one of them and improve the CV. So those are my 3 points to summarize. Copy edit it so there's not one mistake. Make sure it fits with who you are as a person. It can be any person, but make sure it's you. And the third thing is share it widely and happily, and let everybody improve. So those are my 3 points.
All right, I guess up next, I'm David Schweidel at Emory University. And I just want to echo the comments that have come before. I think Ashley, Hari, and Alok had all hit on important points that chances are you guys are stressed out more so than in a typical job market year because of the situation with COVID that we're all living through. It's going to sound somewhat counterintuitive, but we don't bite. We're generally friendly. The AMA experience I don't think you should go into it thinking that it's an adversarial one. I think it was Ashley who had said that, this is probably your best chance at getting a wide range of people exposed to the work that you're doing and an opportunity to get their input and their take on that work. A number of the co-author relationships that I have started at AMA. And so, whether it's among other participants at AMA or faculty that you meet through the job process, I would say think about this, as the opportunity that's being presented to you. Yes, there's an objective, going into this, but there are also side benefits that come from presenting your work to as many people as possible. As far as the CV, I mean, these are all pretty standardized documents, in my opinion. I'll take a slightly different tack and tell you the things that I would avoid on the CV. And the big one to me is overinflation. So for example, the one area that tends to drive me up the wall is a long list of manuscripts in progress that are distinct from working papers. And I'm curious to kind of get a reaction to the other panelists on this. But when I scan a CV, I look at, all right, education, I look at publications, I look at working papers to see kind of, what's far along, where if it's a working paper, there's a manuscript. I can ask about that manuscript. And so anything that's listed up through that point, you should assume is fair game that people are going to have questions about. If anything that I see listed as work in progress or manuscripts in preparation, I don't know how seriously I should take those things. And if you have one or two of them, that's one thing. If I see 10 of them, that really is a red flag, because it raises questions for me about time management and how far along are any of those projects. And so I think, even though it makes it look like you've got a lot going on, and maybe you do, listing all of them, including ones that, maybe you're a week away from finalizing the working paper, well, that's really different from, I had a hallway conversation with someone and we're planning to start thinking about this in the next month. And so putting them under the same heading, I don't think you're doing yourselves any favors. So that to me is the biggest red flag on a manuscript or on a CV. I think it was Hari who said, the abstract that you're including for whether it's the papers coming out of your dissertation or other working papers that you have, whether it's the abstract coming out of the manuscript itself or an extended abstract. So probably now we're limited to, I think most of the journals limit us to 200 words on the abstract. I think you get a little bit more latitude when it comes to the CV. And so you might have an extended abstract that's similar to what you would submit to a conference to say, all right, not only is it, here's the snapshot, but here's a little bit more detail for readers to be able to get a sense for it. So those are things that I think are going, that at least are the things that I initially look for. I think it's standard for us to list the faculty who have taught our classes, to list our research interests. I think those have to be there, which being honest with you guys, I think some of those are spots where I think they're going to see faculty tend to scan through those relatively quickly. I would imagine the most attention, again, I'm speaking primarily for myself, but most attention is going to go toward, what's the dissertation? What publications do you have? What are the working papers? And so those are the places where I would make sure you're very comfortable with what you're presenting there. Venki, I'll turn things over to you.
Okay, thanks, David, and thanks for all the previous panelists. First of all, I join everybody in applauding all of you to go to the market. This is a great occasion. You should just enjoy and look forward to it very positively. But having said that, having listened to all the 4 great previous panelists, I feel like I'm J-Lo's 8th husband or 8th partner or 8th boyfriend or whatever it is, or maybe a rebound like a Ben Affleck, because I know what to say. I had prepared something to say, but I really don't know how to make this any more exciting than what the other 4 panelists have already done. But I will still try, Basically, I think all the others spoke nicely. A couple of things I wanted you to think about differently. One is, I want you to think about how your resume will be seen, filtered, processed in a committee. And this is what, if a committee receives like 100 plus, whatever it's resumes, right? And what are they doing? They're trying to check boxes. So the school has positions, CB or quant or strategy or whatever they say. So they're basically trying to check the boxes first, filters, right? So they look at who's this person, which school is he or she from, and what is the dissertation on, who's the advisor, and those are the primary check boxes. So all your resume should contain information on all this, which is very straightforward. But the greatest trouble is that everybody knows that if you have publications, people look at this person already has publications, they get shortlisted. But the vast majority of you don't have publications and or maybe even not in the most leading journals. So people will have to evaluate the quality of the applicant. So it's better to, that's why the extended abstract helps, is that you have to emphasize what area you're working on. And sometimes schools look at it and say teaching interest. They'll say, we want people to teach analytics, digital marketing, whatever it is. So maybe in your resume, you need to put a teaching interest and research interest separately, and make sure that if you're willing to, I'm assuming you're willing to teach all those things. Because if you don't check those boxes, sometimes people will say, okay, this person is interesting, but we need a person to teach this. Sometimes you might miss out. I don't want you to lose out on based on that. So that's one thing that you can control a little bit by putting that very prominently, what your teaching interests are, what your research. And then, as Alok said, you have substantive interests and methodological. Be very clear. People, whether you like it or not, recruiting committee members always pigeonhole you. They will put you in boxes. Oh, okay, Ben. Oh, Ben should be, he's a CB person working on motivation and blah, 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 right? And they'll say, Jill, she's working on basically CLV Bayesian models, right? They have their own categorization of you. So my suggestion would be to, when you put those substantive interest keywords and try to be broad, put the one that's most appropriate first, but then you add a few things, right? Put all the methodological skills that you have. They're important, because some people say machine learning, and then they'll don't put everything under methodological skills, then it become not very credible, right? So you put the most important skills that you have so that people can identify you. And in your courses, David talked about identifying who taught your seminars or whatever, but feel free to also write the name of your course instructor in econ or psych or social psych or sociology, everywhere where you think that's a credible course that you've taken, right? Not rather than just a laundry list of, these are the courses that I've taken, because sometimes people want to know how good you are. People understand that you don't have a publication as of now, but if I hire you, then are you willing to, take it to the next level? And can you also, people also look at it saying, can this person add value to our colleagues, right? So let's say, Sajeev here, since I've seen him in many of this, I know that he works on this machine learning and these kind of things. So I want to be able to say that if I hire this person, he can also improve the skill set of my faculty. So I think that's why I think that signaling helps in the coursework. And not everybody goes through that, but some people do go through it. And at least at some point in time, it's a good idea. And Alok mentioned that if you did a certification in Coursera, make sure that you did mention, but don't just give a cheap shot. Like in resume, you have to be very careful. There's a balance. Less is more. You don't want to, like as David said, don't give like 10 working papers. It's a wrong signal. And already people talked about prioritizing which paper to highlight first. I would say put the ones that are core to your dissertation first, because that's the job market paper, that's the paper that you are being evaluated on. And also think about your resume as a complement to your advisor's letter, right? It's never that, people get jumping up and down and say, this is a great resume, let's hire this person. Everybody looks at the advisor, everybody looks at the letter, and then the resume is basically the ones that are consistent with the letter. And as Hari said, make sure that it's a very crisp document, 3 or 4 pages or whatever it is. Make sure you don't make any mistakes in there. I'll give you some examples of resumes that I have seen so many years that the person, gives you 3 working papers, right? All are like at different stages and so on. You look at the resume not only has titles that are not consistent with the paper, but also font sizes are wrong. The person has not taken care to really do all these things. And as Hari says, that's a signal. If this person is not, careful enough to do this, I mean, what am I going to get here? I don't want a faculty member here where that person has to be mentored throughout publication process, right? People want you to come and hit the road running, right? You don't want, people want to be nice to you as colleagues, but they don't want to babysit somebody and say, here's how to rewrite this, right? So make sure that in this 2-3 pages or 4 pages, whatever it is, don't make a single mistake, as Hari says, right? Go over it multiple times. And I like Hari's idea that, ask yourself how to sell. But very, very rarely, you can sell yourself on the resume. So, but I don't want you to get really nervous or anxious that the resume is your gateway, or if you didn't do a good job here, everything is sunk. I think the resume is a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient. But so you need to make sure that the necessary or table stakes has to be, all the boxes have to be checked. And if they need more information, there are places to go to. So that's my 2 cents worth. And I know there are 2 other people waiting for me after that. So take it away. I think it's Peter or Clay. I don't know who it is, one of you. But thanks a lot.
Yes, I think it's me who's up now. So my name is Peter Evers. I'm from HEC Paris. And I also like to thank Louise and Divya for organizing this and for inviting me. And congratulations to all the attendees for being on a job market. Yeah, I remember from when I was on the job market, which is starting to become a long time ago. But what I remember from it, at least now, is that it's a unique experience. And you can interpret that as both as positive as negative. And I think at the time, it felt more negative to me. I was just nervous, you're stressed, and you don't know where you're going to end up. And, it's all these uncertainties are not fun. But now in hindsight, I look back on it and I thought, wow, this was really a cool experience, right? Some other panelists already said it, that you meet a lot of people, you meet new friends. Most likely you will find a job and everything will be fine, right? So then afterwards you look back on it, it's like, oh, this was actually pretty cool and a pretty fun experience. And one of my advisors once said, and I think it's true, and that's something to keep in mind, that this is probably the only time in your career that everybody is sincerely interested in you and what you're doing. Once that's passed, it's like, okay, whatever. So that says it is a truly unique experience and fun, and you should enjoy it as well. Even though I know it's hard maybe at the moment, but it will come. So when it comes to the CVs or your resume, I think it sucks to be number 6 or 7 in the list, because I was like, wow, I wish I had all this experience, all this information, all these tips when I was on the job market. As I said a long time ago, these are really great points, and in that sense, I've little to add. Just some main things that I would say. Like one is, and it's been said, there are templates, and follow the templates, right? So download, if you don't know what a template is, if you don't know what we're talking about here, just download like 5 or 6 CVs from like the top schools, from junior faculty that were on job market, 2-3 years ago, whatever. Download the CVs and get 5 or 6 of them, and you'll see what the template is. There's nothing, they all very much look similar. And so that's one thing. So I agree with everybody that, like, probably the main things when we're skimming resumes is that we're looking at is like, where you're from, who's your advisor, what are you working on, what have you published, right? So that's indeed, that information needs to shine through. And that's very important as well. Now, maybe I add something, because I guess I'm the only one from a non-US school here, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe I'll add something on that. Like, in particular, if you go to many European places, and maybe it's the same for Asian school or Australian, but for many European places, we maybe add one little thing to the criteria. We're sort of like looking for why you would want to come and live, say, in my case, in France, right? What does this person have as a connection with Europe or with France? And that could be useful as well. Like, for a lot of you, maybe your first target is to stay in the US or to find the US school, and that's fine. But we're also trying to look for people who want to come to, say, HEC Paris or wherever else in Europe, who want to stay with us and not just come here for like, okay, I couldn't find a job, I just go here and and then 2 years from now I'll leave again. That's definitely not, nobody wants that, right? And so we're looking for a certain connection. So as an example, we just hired someone who is married to a French guy. And that was very clear from the information package that he sent, right? And that gives you, in our eyes, a little plus. Let me put it that way. It's like, okay, wait, this person's maybe gettable. He might or she might want to stay, is planning to settle here. So that's maybe if you're planning to apply to non-US schools, then maybe that's something you want to think about, right? That's something you want to maybe communicate. Look, why do you want to be in this place? We've talked to people that had never been in France, had no clue about knew that Paris was the capital city, but that was about it, right? And then you ask, why you're interested. Why would you potentially want to live in France? Like, oh, wow, Paris is so cool. Okay, have you been there? No, I've never been. It's like, okay, come on. I mean, so if you have anything to say there, then, maybe you want to highlight it. And I'm not sure if this has to go in the resume, but I like the suggestion. I forgot whether it was Harry or Alok that made this, to have a website, because these are things that you can put on your website, right? So there you can put some extra things like your hobbies and whatever you want to communicate. And we look at it, right? So when we see you have a website, I look at it. In particular, if you sort of like pass a certain cutoff, right? So we're going to look at your website, because we're not only interested in hiring someone who's a good academic, potentially a good teacher, but we also want to hire a fun colleague, somebody that's fun to have around, somebody that wants to be with us, wants to stay, tries to get tenure, wants to stay with us for long term, right? That's sort of like the goal. Because also from our perspective, at least, I don't know if my colleague panelists agree with it. I mean, being on the recruitment committee also is fun, but sucks at the same time. It's a lot of work. I mean, it's fun, but it's a lot of work. And yeah, we don't want to do this too often. So we want to hire a colleague that wants to stay. And these are all things that if you have little things you can communicate in that direction, in particular if it's a non-US school, then that would help. So maybe that's the one thing I could add here. So maybe that's it. And then Clay has the honor to try to come up with something else which has not been said before.
I was smart enough to prepare nothing because I knew this was going to happen. So I think the most important thing for me is triangulate. And so we have 7 people here with different flavors. I've been getting texts from a couple of my students that are on the market right now, basically, oh crap, should I have done A, B, and C? And I agree with everything that's been said. And for some of them, I'm going to say yes, and some of them I'm going to say no, because it really depends on, what kind of job you're looking for. But get advice from a lot of people. As advisors, we put blinders on sometimes, and we understand what you're saying because we're so close to your content, but that third party might not. And so again, I think get some feedback. If you're a strategy candidate, get some behavioral people to review and make sure they can understand what you're doing, because they're going to be on that search committee too, and vice versa. So that was kind of my main takeaway, is really try to get that spread of feedback. Other than that, just wanted to do a little bit of the cheerleading too, is the worst job in our field is better than the best job in industry. So my worst day as an academic is better than my best day consulting. And so again, like, the job market is stressful, it's brutal. But the one thing I've seen now after like 15 years of this, it's remarkably efficient. You know, there's some people that maybe end up with a mismatch with that first placement, but by some rhyme or reason, it tends to put people on the path that really is ideal for them. And if it isn't, you have a couple of years to reset. So, you know, kind of enjoy the ride to the extent you can, because it is going to work out as you go through. Other big kind of resume things for me is the don't get creative. Peter's advice is that there's a template. Yes. I see a creative resume and I roll my eyes immediately. I don't care. I need to know where you got your PhD. I need to know, are you behavioral? Are you strategy? Are you analytical? Are you empirical quant? Like, that's it. I need to be able to figure that out in the first half page of your resume. If I can't, I'm already annoyed. After that, I want to see your research profile, you know, and get an idea of what do you have published or in process. And I love the expanded abstract idea too, because a lot of times the devil's in the details as I can work through. And so like those standard templates are so nice, because if you're tearing through 110 resumes, cute and creative is annoying when you're on the recruiting committee. It's not a value add. It really isn't. It's not going to differentiate you. The paper is as you start to go through. Last thing for me was David's point on the working papers versus work in progress. I think, again, depending on who you are, if it's going to be listed as a working paper, within 24 hours of getting an email, you should be able to share a draft with someone. And even if that draft has work to do, when I've had students do them in the past, we'll add like a header on that title page, just saying, you know, please be gentle. This is a working paper. These are the core edits that are underway right now. You know we need to tighten up the contribution in the discussion section. We're running these robustness analyses to improve the credibility of the results. But that way you kind of coach them when they get the working paper. But it is nice to say, oh, you have a 45-page draft. It's real. That's great. And then you can show some calibration on the fact that I know there's still work to be done, but you can try to head off some of those concerns the readers might have, you know, in advance by showing them that there is a paper here. And I also know the changes that need to be made to turn it into potentially an A paper, and just to signal that quality. But that's really for me, is I think try to figure out where else you have differential skill sets. Sometimes if you're in a program that has you teach more, that's going to hurt your research productivity, but it might help you fill a gap that'll go through as you start to do with it. So again, I think try to be honest. The same thing is on Venki's point. If you're going to put machine learning, you better be capable of having a 45-minute discussion with our machine learning person, you know, because if you don't, then the interview's over before you get started as it starts to go through. So just, again, tell the truth, because this resume is going to get you a job. And if you have to posture on who you are, then you're going to have to fake it for 6 more years until a tenure vote. And that's going to be miserable. Like, what we do is hard enough, even if you're your authentic stuff. I can't imagine going through tenure trying to fake who you are. It would just be awful. Like, you're going to get a great job. It's going to work out. Just tell the truth. And that'll help you actually land where you should land. And life happiness will be a lot better. But I'll shut up now, because I think we have 20 minutes, which is insane for the peanut gallery to hit us with questions. So Louis, I'll turn it over to you. Run point, man.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your feedback there. We definitely touched on points 1 and 2 there. So we have received a lot of questions. I know with only 20 minutes left and everyone's time, any of the panelists feel free to chime in, and then we can move on to the next question. So one of the questions we received is we talk about websites as well as links on the CV. Any recommendations, or maybe it's a no-no, to have some sort of video presentation embedded in the CV or on your website, introducing yourself and talking about your research a little bit, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, already getting downvotes there. But, just like a little extra something was one of the questions that we had there.
I think you get a little bit more latitude with the website. I would not go fancy on the CV. Keep it boring.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, for the CV, I want a template. If you want to get creative on the website, I'm cool with that. But I want a quick process on the CV.
Right, but the gist of, if you want to understand what it is that people are trying to hire a scholar. People are not trying to hire a cute person here. So that's what Clay and David have been talking about. you got to project yourself as a scholar. So, and your work has to speak, your work ethic has to speak, your absolute dedication to quality has to speak. These are the three things that I would focus on.
Awesome. Thank you. So another question here. Once the application is submitted, do any of you recommend reaching out to faculty members that maybe you know at that school or that your advisor knows, kind of leveraging those connections? If the answer is yes, is there a better way to go about that? Or you just kind of leave the application out there and let it simmer?
Yeah, I could say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Peter.
I thought you were, I didn't hear you speak, so then.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say no, categorical no, for two reasons. One, that is why you all have advisors. They've spent their whole life trying to do what you're trying to do. They know how important it is for you to get off to a good start in life. And they already know the things that you want. So, and another simple way to look at it is the chances that you will pull off a job by sending an email to somebody that, when your advisor doesn't have that opportunity, the chances are probably 1 in a million that something like that will happen. So just let it take the course, and let's say that you miss your chance to write one email to somebody that could have landed you. That's fine. In 20 years, it will be more than okay if you have maintained your sanctity in the profession.
Yeah, I wanted to say exactly the same thing as Hari. That would be very. I would find it very strange if I would receive an email like that. I do get it every now and then from an advisor. If I know the person well, say my co-author, one of my co-authors, student on the market, and obviously you talk about that student, and so that happens, and that's totally fine. But I would find it very strange if a student would email me directly. What we do see is that students send updates, typically to the admin person who's in charge, like, hey, my JMR just got accepted, and I just want to let you know that. And I think that is fine, and probably important even. So that is fine, but I think other than that, I would absolutely not do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. We just had a question roll in, maybe off the back of this. For those that have accepted postdoc, is there a way to navigate that differently? Is it the same? What do you recommend for those that have accepted postdoc positions and then are applying after?
So I can share a little feedback. I've had this happen personally to one of my students, and for him, the postdoc was great because it gave him enough of a bridge to develop kind of that more mature research pipeline that they wanted. What we found was just being very frank about why the postdoc was pursued. When he was a little generic in it, it seemed a little weird. Like, was there something wrong with you and you didn't get a job, so you hid in a postdoc? Seemed to be kind of the signals that were being sent by it. Once he got very blunt, and then I got very blunt in the reach out when I reached out to faculty about why he did this, he started to get a lot more traction, where it was, listen, I left to a new university. He graduated a year early, and we placed him in a postdoc with 2 other co-authors, with a publication, so we could develop those. Then all of a sudden, he started to get, those top schools that were kind of weeding him out as being a little weird. Maybe there's something wrong with him, versus being thoughtful and trying to develop as a scholar. It changed for him. So I think if you can show how that postdoc is helping you on that path to better scholarship, but be really articulate in doing that, it'll be really helpful. If it's just kind of a generic postdoc, it might send it's just non-traditional still in our field. So it sends kind of a weird signal. So I think if you can show that path to scholarship, that's really good. And this is lesson learned just personally dealing with this last year on the job market with one of my students.
Great. We've received actually a lot of questions along the same line here, so I'll just ask it in one general question. And we talk about identifying yourself and kind of putting yourself in that box for faculty members to easily remember you. And so what about if you have multiple areas? So your behavioral, but then also consumer and managerial behavior or something. How do you position yourself when you've got your hand in two different streams, if you will?
I think Clay has already responded to this. I thought that's a very good response. So I encourage you to read that. It's very straightforward. Think of yourself, what's your primary focus or affiliation? If you think you're primarily a CB researcher, first start off with that. You can say a CB researcher with a focus on promotions, or CB research, or a quant researcher with a focus on, let's say, customer lifetime value, or customer modeling. Whatever it is, that's people always want to classify you as three broad buckets, right? You're a quant researcher, CB researcher, or a strategy researcher. No matter how hard you might try to be breaking the molds and maybe cross-functional, cross-fertilization, all kinds of things, but people unfortunately want to first identify where your first box is. So always lead off with that, and then you can start with the others. That may be the best way to really go about that.
I would say too, think of it this way, when you're in front of a department, you sort of want somebody who is going to fight for you and is particularly interested in you as a candidate. And so the better you can identify who that is and be identified to that person, the better. And so keeping it simple in terms of your identification, I think, can help by identifying you as a quant, managerial, or behavioral, because it kind of lets you know, okay, what team are you is going to fight for you in the job process. I've seen before it happen where somebody positions themselves just kind of broadly, and then no side sort of like takes ownership over that person. And it's kind of too bad that we have to do that, but again, it is a signaling process.
Awesome. And thank you, Dr. Voorhees, for answering a lot of the questions in the comments. I didn't quite catch some of them as I was scrolling through. So we touched on this in the general comments, but has been a lot of comments talking about the weight of different things. Specifically, if you don't have any publications, but you have a lot of teaching experience, are you going to highlight that and put teaching evals on your CV to kind of bump that up? For those that don't have any publications coming out, what is going to weigh the most in your minds?
Feel free to chime in. I'll be honest here. There's not much you can do at this stage with 3 weeks to go. So let the sorting happen on the other side, right? So there may be a school X that only cares about a certain kind of publication in a certain kind of journal, and if you're worried about if you're working on a certain kind of problem. And then there may be another school that just wants a nice person who is working on a whole range of problems. We have no idea. As of now, whatever it is that you've done on the research, the teaching, the service side, and if there's something specific, say you write op-eds or you're a professional speaker or something like that, just highlight that and let the second part of the sorting process do its job for you. Right? This is simple. It's like Harry Potter. It's like you have your brain and the sorting hat will figure it out. As simple as that.
Just to add to what Harry, go ahead, Clay, sorry.
The only other thing I was going to chime in is the market's been goofy the last couple of years with a really attractive secondary market in February and March. And so if you do have a gap that you're aware of, maybe it's limited teaching experience, you could use the fall semester to maybe, get some TA experience or maybe even teach a course to fill that gap. And so it's kind of a weird thing for now. For the jobs that are posted now, it is what it is. But you could build towards that. And especially if you're worried about the research pipeline to try to chase a top tier research job, close out your best project and make sure it's under review by maybe the end of October if it's close. And then you have that chance of having that revision in January or February for that second round of posts. Mm-hmm. And so I think for now, the job's posted. I agree with Hari. You're on a path, but then don't be complacent. Don't sit around stressed about the job market this fall, and make good so you can be the best version of yourself in January or February too for that second round.
Just to quickly add, I mean, as Hari mentioned, you've already done what you had to do. And so, yes, you can put yourself in the best light, but, going back to David's point, don't over-engineer yourself. It'll be worse if you oversell yourself and you get the AMA and then they figure out, half of it is not true, or even 10% of it is not true. It's over, right? So then it's hard to go back and trust whatever else you've said on your CV. So present whatever you have in the best possible light, obviously taking the feedback and whatnot, but don't try to over-engineer that document. I don't think it's going to serve you well in the long run.
There was an interesting question here about the extended abstract. So when submitting to, some people are 30, 50, 70 schools, is there any conflict there when you're submitting your extended abstract to someone who may be reviewing a paper or reviewing you in the journal process? Is that going to conflict with the double blind process there? If so, is there a way of circumventing that?
Can I go on this? Okay, I think first of all, when you're trying to be in the market, do not stress yourself about, double blind now, because I think your focus should be on how do I make myself heard, and this is your greatest opportunity, as everybody said. People are willing to engage with you and talk to you. All right, as it is, we know abstracts that you present in a conference, people can always access that. So it's not like you're keeping something really secret, right? That we want nobody to know until the article is magically published in the JMR or whatever, right? So that should be the least of your worries. You should be focused on how do I make my extended abstract exciting, interesting, truthful, and at the same time signal that it's got potential, right? And I think that should be the focus. I would not worry about this. Like, a lot of entrepreneurs will come and say, oh, I don't want to tell the VCs what I'm going to do because they'll steal my ideas, right? So if you have that mentality, you'll never get a company off the ground. So I would say, don't worry about this and just move on.
Okay, great. Thank you. A few questions here, a few echoing the same question. When we talk about the personal connection to the job, so for example, I'm marrying a person who's French. Do we communicate that in the cover letter, saying, hey, I grew up in Chicago, so Chicagoland area is great for me. I've got family here. Do you be that blunt with it in the cover letter or the personal statement? And how do you go about strictly conveying that to the committee?
Yeah, maybe since France was the example, I maybe say something about it. I think that you could indicate that in the cover letter. That's one way to do it. The cover letters, same as CV, follow a certain template, but we definitely like it if in the cover letter, if it's personalized to the school you're applying for, and we can see that at least part of the cover letter. And I think that's one way to do it. We've heard it or seen it indirectly through advisors. So we talked about it before, that so should we email during the recruiting process a professor? We said, no, don't do it, but your advisors could, for instance, if there's a personal connection. So that's how it's happened. So I've had people approach me. It's like, if the student applied to your school, and by the way, her mom is French, and they really like it in France. So maybe you should take a close look at her or him. And so those are ways that can be communicated, right? So I think there's several ways to do that, and yeah, if you should not hide it, if you have something to say there, yeah, please let us know, right? So Ashley, I think wants to say something.
One note on this too is, in the US, it's illegal for us to ask you about family situations, children, anything. And so you will not find probably the committee asking you these questions, but you can volunteer it, right? And as Peter said, it's very helpful. And if you do want to volunteer it, that's fine. But just be aware that we're not going to probably ask you about that, but so it'll be kind of on you to mention your situation and why you might be interested personally.
and that's the same for us. I don't know about whether it's illegal or not. In France, there's a lot of stuff you can do, but we would also not. I would not. Maybe some of my colleagues would, but I would not ask it. So this is really these personal things. If you think it's relevant and if you think it could make you more interesting to the local place, then I would certainly not hide it and communicate it. Yep.
Yeah. The one thing I would add, just as a caveat, nothing is going to lose schools' interests more than sending them a personalized cover letter that has been personalized for the wrong school. And while people are laughing, they're also nodding because this happens to all of us. I get the cover letter that was recycled from 20 other schools. It's like, okay, you're attempting to personalize it and you didn't take the effort to get it right.
And also don't send conflicting information. So one school you tell you're okay with this one, people talk. I mean, and there is more transparency, I mean, right now it's not happening at AMAs, but that is the conversation. We're talking to this candidate or not talking to. So there is information flowing even without you telling the committee. So don't send conflicting information. Again, it puts you in an awkward situation in that case.
Okay, great. I think that buttons this up really nicely. We've got a lot of other questions coming in, and just for the sake of time, we are going to end here. But I do want to mention that we're going to have part 2 of this, and so you can carry over those questions on August 3rd, again from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And you can also send those questions to Divya and myself, and you can find all of our information on docsig.org, as well as the PDF here that has all the information of our panel. So on behalf of DocSIG, I want to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time, detailed explanations, personalized explanations, and also offering additional advice in chat. Really appreciate that. Thank you everyone for joining. We wish you good luck on the job market, and we hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Again, thank you all so much. And the recording of this will be sent out to all of those who have registered to attend. And I hope everyone has a great day. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck to everybody.
All the very best, and
Bye-bye.
Good luck, everybody. Get a bunch of good job offers and make us pay you more money.